Hi there. Today I want to give you 9 tips to protect your property interests when you're married or before you get married. So, if you're getting a divorce, your heart starts to pound because now you're worried about what's the financial ripple effect. Divorce is expensive, but you do have control over how expensive. As a lawyer, I can tell you that it's better to be realistic about what's achievable rather than fighting for what is at best uncertain. Because the reality is that if you go into a court, it's a crapshoot. There is absolutely no guarantee that a judge is going to agree with your position and give you what you've asked for. So, what are my 9 tips? First of all, get a prenup agreement or a cohab agreement before you move in together. A cohab agreement can turn into a prenuptial agreement once you are married, but it covers you in that period of living together before you actually marry. So what this document is it's basically a document that says, if this doesn't work out, this is how we're going to divide our assets and whether we're going to pay out spousal support. You can't put things in about kids in a prenup agreement. It's best interest of the children and it's determined at the time. So you can't bargain on child support, for instance. Basically, a prenup says, in most cases, I'll keep what's mine, what I came in with, you keep what you came in with, and then anything that we've gained during the period we've been together, we'll divide equally. If you have a pension, like the military pensions, sometimes you can say your wife will have no claim on your military pension. You might not have any claim on her nurse's pension, for instance. The key to the prenup is you may shit test a woman. And she says, sure, no, absolutely, agreement before we move in together, great idea, absolutely agree with everything, would never touch your pension, absolutely. Until she sits in a lawyer's office and signs that document, she hasn't passed the shit test. I can tell you many times when it comes down to her putting her pen on the paper, she'll back out. I've seen it happen, and yes, I've seen some of the men decide to go on and marry, and then I've got to get them out of the marriage later. Surprise, she wants everything. So I want that to be very clear, because there's lots of times where some people on the web will tell you, when you're shit testing, that's one of the things, so you won't be in a relationship without an agreement in advance. And yeah, women will agree. Nope. Until they're signing with a lawyer, they haven't actually passed the test. My second tip is agreements cost money. It's just, in my prenup agreements, 16-page contract, because marriage is a contract. And when you're getting divorced, it's basically breaking a contract and trying to get you out of it. There's always a penalty when you break a contract. But the fee you're going to pay for a prenup agreement doesn't even come close to how much it's going to cost you to fight in a divorce. My hourly rate gets used up really fast compared to what someone paid for a prenup. You also have to have independent legal advice on both sides. That's relatively minor cost in comparison to a divorce. You can get divorced relatively inexpensively if there's nothing being contested. But a contested divorce that goes to trial, you're looking at up to $250,000. Most people don't have $250,000 to spend on a divorce. You want to have that prenup drawn up, ideally at least 4 months before the wedding, so that they can't go into court and say, I was pressured into signing this because it was 2 weeks before the wedding and I'd have had to cancel everything and I was so pressured and I just signed it. That's going to get them out of being held to that agreement. So ideally, about 4 months or even longer before, ahead of time, with a lawyer, the document is signed. Now, what if you're already married or living with someone and you'd like to get an agreement in case something happens? That's absolutely possible. It's called a post-nup agreement, and it can be drawn up at any point in the relationship, even after the wedding. This is because our courts determine that two adults that are perfectly capable of making decisions for themselves can contract anything. So yes, you can do an agreement after you're married. I quite often will say to people, pick an anniversary, 25 years, 30 years, 50 years, and then you're going to have a bonfire and burn up your prenup because you lasted that long. Number 4, make arrangements in your will or naming beneficiaries in things like life insurance policies, RRSPs, pension plans that provide for your spouse. This is especially important if this is not a first marriage and you have children from your previous relationships, because a spouse has first claim on your estate. But if they've been taken care of through other means, either certain parts of your will, of your property, or they've got a large life insurance policy, RRSPs, this sort of thing, that can help protect some of the inheritance for your kids. This is why it's important to make sure that you take care of these types of things and not leave a messy estate to be dealt with fighting between stepmom and stepkids. Number 5, keep track of all the gifts and inheritances that you receive, because those are exempt from matrimonial property division. So if your dad gives you an antique car, you need to record when it was given, that it was a gift, and how much it was worth at the time. If you inherit antique furniture from your mother that happens to be very valuable, that's exempt. If your parents give you money for a down payment on a house that is a gift, certain parts of that will be exempt from property division, and that value is retained by you. But it's only going to happen if you can prove it was a gift or an inheritance. You need to insist that both partners work outside the household during the relationship. Why? Because if you, as a family, decide that one spouse is staying home to look after the kids full time, there's going to be discussions about spousal support. If you're both working full time, have careers, if there's any spousal support at all, it's going to be minimized. I've seen many a female lawyer gasp during a family law conference when they bring up spousal support because they've got stay-at-home husbands looking after the kids. So spousal support goes both ways. Number 7, get legal advice sooner rather than later when your relationship starts to unravel. If you've got any inkling at all that the relationship is in trouble, talk to a lawyer. Pay for an hour of a lawyer's time so that you know where you stand and how you can protect yourself before things turn ugly. For example, maybe you want to cancel getting your paycheck going into a joint bank account where she's just waiting because she knows when that deployment pay is going to hit and she knows when that bonus is going to come in, and that's when she'll pull the plug on the marriage and empty the bank account on her way out the door. Number 8, if you try to hide money, give it to relatives, it's not going to work. Don't bother. Anything that can be traced, if all of a sudden $10,000 is missing from your bank account and it can be traced to your parents, for instance, or a brother or a sister, under the Divorce Act, your ex can come after them personally for that value of money, even if they don't have it anymore. not worth the risk. It's not worth the battle in the court. It's not worth dragging your family or friends into your divorce, because then they become a party to your divorce. Don't think the friendship will last too long, if you know what I mean. And finally, number 9, every province is different from law on property division. In Canada, property is a provincial jurisdiction. So what your buddies tell you what happened to them in Quebec or Ontario or BC or in the Maritimes, it's not going to be the same as in Alberta. This is important to know, because if you get a judgment here for property division, but you got an asset somewhere else, then you have to file that judgment in another court. And as you can gather, if your lawyer is going to have to go to a court in a different province, yeah, the bills are going to add up. So be very aware, property does not work the same in every province. And if you get a judgment in one province that you're trying to get paid for in another province, it's going to cost money. Here's a new mantra for you. A good divorce is possible. I've seen it happen. I have, believe it or not. I have seen it happen. And the people move on with their lives. Practical legal advice can bring you an affordable resolution and closure. And then you can move on to the next chapter of your life. Property is a math problem, fellas. Don't bring emotion into it.